World War I wrote the blueprint. World War II built the factory. Every nation took the same lessons from the trenches and turned them into something faster, heavier, and more psychologically devastating than anything that came before. These are the 38 weapons that defined the deadliest war in human history. German weapons. The Panther, 44 tons, 75mm KWK-42, longer and more lethal at range than the Tiger's gun. Built as a direct response to the Soviet T-34. It combined sloped armor with a high-velocity gun no Allied tank could match in 1943. 6,000 produced. German crews called it the best tank of the war. Allied crews called it the most dangerous thing on tracks. The Tiger II. 68 tons, 88mm KWK-43, capable of destroying any Allied tank at 2,500 meters. 185mm of frontal armor. Nothing the Allies fielded in 1944 could penetrate it from the front at combat range. 489 built. Too heavy for most bridges, prone to mechanical failure, but the psychological effect on Allied crews who encountered it was total. The StuG III. No turret, low profile, 75mm gun on a Panzer III chassis. Cheaper and faster to produce than a full tank. 10,086 built, more than any other German armored vehicle of the war. It destroyed more Allied tanks than any other German weapon. Crews called it the infantryman's best friend. The Bf-109, Daimler-Benz engine. Top speed 640 kilometers per hour. The backbone of the Luftwaffe from the first day of the war to the last. Over 33,000 produced. The most produced fighter aircraft in history. It outclassed everything it faced in 1939 and 1940. By 1944, it was being outclassed in turn, but Germany kept building it because nothing else was ready in sufficient numbers. The FW-190, BMW 801 radial engine. Top speed 654 kilometers per hour. When it appeared over the English Channel in 1941, it was superior to the Spitfire 5 in every performance category. RAF pilots reported complete shock. They had believed air superiority was theirs. It forced Britain to accelerate the Spitfire 9 program by months. 20,000 produced. The HE-111, twin Junkers, Jumo engines. 2,000 kilogram bomb load. The primary German medium bomber of the war. It bombed Warsaw, Rotterdam, London, and Stalingrad. Crews flew it in tight defensive formations, the same lesson the Allies had applied to the B-17. By 1943, it was obsolete and being destroyed in increasing numbers. Germany kept using it because no adequate replacement existed. The Nebelwerfer. 6-barrel, 150mm rocket launcher. A full salvo in 10 seconds, then reposition before counter-battery fire arrived. Allied soldiers called the incoming sound "Screaming Mimi," a rising mechanical shriek across the sky. Units receiving a full battery salvo were documented as temporarily combat ineffective from sound alone. The 88mm flak gun, originally anti-aircraft. Muzzle velocity 820 meters per second. German crews discovered it could destroy any Allied tank at over 2,000 meters, farther than most Allied tanks could even identify a target. Feared on every front from North Africa to Berlin. The Pak-40, 75mm anti-tank gun, penetrated 154mm of armor at 500 meters, enough to kill a Sherman or T-34 at standard combat ranges. 23,303 produced. It became the standard German anti-tank weapon from 1942 onward, replacing the earlier guns that could no longer penetrate Soviet armor. Light enough to be manhandled into position by its crew. Soviet weapons. The Mosin Nagant. 7.6 2x54mm R. 5-round internal magazine, bolt action, designed in 1891, still the primary Soviet infantry rifle in 1945. Over 17 million produced during the war alone. Simple, reliable, and accurate at long range. Soviet snipers using the Mosin Nagant with PU optics were documented as the most psychologically effective individual weapons on the Eastern Front. The IS-2, 46 tons, 122mm D25T cannon, the most powerful tank gun of the war. A single round could tear the turret off a Tiger II. German crews were ordered to avoid direct engagement at all costs. 3,385 built, deployed exclusively for breaking the hardest defensive positions on the Eastern Front. Stalin's hammer. The PPSH-41, 7.62 by 25 millimeters, 71-round drum, 900 rounds per minute, the highest rate of fire of any submachine gun in the war. 6 million built. Soviet infantry carried 2. At close range, a squad with PPSH-41s produced a volume of fire no German unit could match. The IL-2 Sturmovik, a ground attack aircraft with 700 kilograms of armor integrated into the airframe. It flew low and slow over German armored columns, delivering rockets, bombs, and 23mm cannon fire. German troops called it the Black Death. 36,183 built, the most produced military aircraft in history. The P-2, twin-engine Soviet dive bomber. Top speed, 580 kilometers per hour, faster than many German fighters it encountered. 11,427 produced. It gave the Soviet Air Force a precision bombing capability it had lacked entirely in 1941. German ground commanders reported it as the most tactically effective Soviet aircraft used against fortified positions. The SVT-40, 7.6 2x54mm A-channel ER. 10-round detachable magazine. Semi-automatic, while most infantry worldwide still operated bolt actions. German soldiers captured and used them voluntarily. The gas system was directly copied by German engineers for the Gewehr 43, the PTRD anti-tank rifle. 14.5 by 114mm. Single shot. 2 meters long. One man carried it. Penetrated 40mm of armor at 100 meters. When German armor grew too thick, it became an anti-materiel weapon instead, destroying vehicles, artillery, and aircraft on the ground. The ZAS-3, 76mm divisional gun, 1,200 kilograms, light enough to be moved by its crew without a vehicle. It functioned simultaneously as a field gun, anti-tank gun, and infantry support weapon. 103,000 produced, more than any other artillery piece of the war. Soviet commanders called it the weapon that held the line when nothing else could. The Su-100, 100mm D10S gun on a T-34 chassis. No turret, lower profile, faster to produce than a full tank. At 1,000 meters, it penetrated 185mm of armor. German crews called turretless tank destroyers harder to spot and harder to kill than conventional tanks. 2,335 built in the final year of the war. The Yak-9, single-engine Soviet fighter, 1,300 horsepower, armed with 20mm and 37mm cannon variants. Lightweight, Soviet designers stripped every unnecessary component to maximize performance. 16,769 built. It gave Soviet pilots air superiority over the Eastern Front for the first time in 1943. The T-70, light tank, 2-man crew, 45mm gun. Too light to fight German armor directly, used for reconnaissance and infantry support. The Soviets lost them in massive numbers and kept building them. 8,226 produced because they were fast, cheap, and could be built in factories that couldn't produce T-34s. American weapons. The M1 Garand, .30-06, 8-round N-block clip, semi-automatic. While most infantry worldwide operated bolt actions, every American infantryman had a self-loading weapon from day one. General Patton called it the greatest battle implement ever devised. 5.4 million produced. The Thompson submachine gun, .45 ACP, 30-round box or 50-round drum, 700 rounds per minute. Developed for WW1 trenches, it arrived too late for that war. In WW2, it became the defining American close-range weapon. Heavy, reliable, devastating. Over 1.5 million produced for Allied forces. The M1 carbine, 30 carbine, 15-round magazine, semi-automatic. Half the weight of the M1 Garand. Issued to officers, vehicle crews, and support troops who needed a weapon lighter than a full rifle. 6.1 million produced. The most produced American small arm of the war. Soldiers who carried it either swore by it or swore at it, depending on the range of the engagement. The M1 bazooka, 60mm rocket, 3.5 kilograms, one man. It gave American infantry the ability to destroy German armored vehicles that no rifle could touch. German engineers captured one in North Africa and produced the Panzer Schreck, a larger copy, within months. The B-17 Flying Fortress, 4 engines, 2,700 kilogram bomb load, 13 defensive .50 caliber machine guns. It flew in tight formations over Germany in daylight. 12,731 built. German pilots called the defensive fire from massed formations the most dangerous thing in the sky. The B-29 Superfortress, 4 Wright-R 3350 engines. Top speed 574 kilometers per hour. Pressurized cabin, it flew at 9,000 meters, above the ceiling of most Japanese fighters. 3,970 built. It firebombed Tokyo, killing more people in a single night than the atomic bombs. Then it delivered the atomic bombs, the weapon that ended the war. The P-51 Mustang. Top speed 703 kilometers per hour. Range 2,755 kilometers with drop tanks, enough to escort bombers from Britain to Berlin and back. Before it, American bombers were being destroyed faster than they could be replaced. After it, the Luftwaffe was outnumbered over its own territory. One aircraft changed the strategic air war. The M2 Browning, 50 BMG, 600 rounds per minute, effective range 1,800 meters, mounted on aircraft, vehicles, and fixed positions, the most versatile weapon in the American arsenal. Still in active service today, completely unchanged 80 years later. The M2 flamethrower, napalm-thickened fuel, 60-meter range, used primarily in the Pacific against fortified Japanese positions that conventional weapons couldn't clear. The psychological effect on defenders was documented as more decisive than the casualties it caused. British weapons, the Spitfire, Rolls-Royce Merlin engine, elliptical wings, top speed 594 kilometers per hour. During the Battle of Britain, the only Allied aircraft that could match the Bf-109 at altitude, 20,351, built across 24 variants. The weapon that proved Britain could not be broken from the air. The Avro Lancaster, 4 Rolls-Royce Merlin engines, 6,350 kilogram bomb load, capable of carrying the 10-ton Grand Slam earthquake bomb. 7,377 built. It flew 156,000 sorties over Europe. Bomber Command called it the finest heavy bomber of the war. German night fighter pilots called Lancaster formations the most dangerous target they ever faced. The Hawker Typhoon. Napier Sabre engine, top speed 663 kilometers per hour. Armed with 420mm cannon and 8 rocket projectiles. Initially plagued by engine failures and structural problems, 151 lost to accidents before it ever reached combat. Once fixed, it became the most devastating ground attack aircraft in the Western Allied arsenal. German armored columns in Normandy reported complete paralysis under Typhoon attack. The Piat. No propellant gases. A powerful spring launched a 1.1 kilogram shaped charge. Silent. No backblast. A man could fire it from an enclosed room with no signature. Penetrated 100 millimeters of armor. Awkward and brutally difficult to cock, and irreplaceable in urban combat where a bazooka's backblast would kill the firer. The Bren gun. .303 British. 30-round top-mounted magazine, 500 rounds per minute. Reliable, accurate, simple. 30 nations used it. Still in service in some armies today. The de Havilland Mosquito. Built almost entirely from wood, invisible to early radar systems. Top speed, 668 kilometers per hour, faster than most German fighters of 1941. Carried a 1,800 kilogram bomb load to Berlin and returned before Luftwaffe interceptors could be scrambled. German commanders called it the aircraft they feared most. The Churchill tank. 40 tons. Maximum 20 kilometers per hour. Designed for terrain no other Allied tank could cross. Extreme gradients, rubble, bocage. At Dieppe in 1942, it failed. At Monte Cassino in 1943, it became irreplaceable. The tank that proved raw speed was not the only measure of a weapon. The Cromwell tank, 28 tons. Rolls-Royce Meteor engine, 600 horsepower. Top speed, 64 kilometers per hour. The fastest British tank of the war, armed with a 75mm gun. It couldn't penetrate a Panther from the front, but it could outrun anything Germany built. British armored commanders used its speed to flank, encircle, and force engagements on their own terms. The Sten Gun, 9mm, 32-round side magazine, manufactured for approximately £2.50 per unit. So simple that resistance fighters across occupied Europe manufactured copies in basement workshops. 4 million produced. Crude, occasionally unreliable. And the weapon that put submachine gun firepower in the hands of every partisan on the continent.